Chapter 1, The Weight of Ice. Half a kilometer beneath the surface of XAE 812 station, the ice did not feel like water. It felt like the emptiness inside of a bell. Luke Ashford had spent enough years inside it to know the difference between the silence that meant the vein was stable and the silence that meant it was listening. Tunnel 9 had been quiet all morning. The good kind. The kind that let a man forget, for an hour at a time, the 400 kilograms of plate and hydraulic muscle wrapped around his body, and simply work. The Mark IV mining frame had been declared obsolete 11 years before Luke was born. The administration's quartermasters kept building newer models for the brochures and the recruitment posters, the sleek black ones with the council seal stamped across the chest plate. Out here, in the real tunnels, men and women still wore the old steel, because the old steel had been paid for already and the administration saw no reason to spend twice on the same hole in the ground. This particular suit had a dent over the left shoulder plate, shaped like a fist, where a support strut had let go 19 years ago and nearly taken his father's arm off at the joint. His father had kept the dent rather than requisition a replacement panel. "It reminds the suit who's in charge," he used to say, grinning behind a faceplate scratched white with a decade of ice dust. Luke had inherited the dent along with everything else his father owned, which was the suit, a tin of mismatched tools, and a debt to the company store that had taken him 6 years to pay off after both his parents were gone. He kept the dent. It seemed only right. "Ashford. You're drifting again." Garrick Lynch's voice crackled through the bone conduction speaker bolted behind Luke's left ear, flat and unimpressed, the way it always was. Garrick had run Crew 9 for 14 years and had long ago stopped wasting breath on anything that wasn't a number. "Quota says 4 more blocks before shift change." "I count 2. The ice doesn't care about your feelings, son." "Copy." Luke brought the twin laser cutters up from his forearms, the servos in his shoulders groaning in protest the way they always did in the cold, and let the beams bite back into the face of the vein. Steam hissed where the heat met the ancient ice, billowing white and vanishing into the recyclers bolted to the tunnel ceiling. Somewhere under his boots lay water older than Mars had been a colony at all, water older, some said, than humanity itself, locked into crystal lattices since before the first ship ever left Earth's gravity well. Earth. The word always arrived in his mind with the same flat, distant weight, the way a name from a story arrives. A place he had never seen and never would. A place that, by every account he had ever been taught, had surrendered its soul to machines 2.5 centuries ago and left the rest of humanity for dead. He didn't think about it often. There was no quota for thinking. "Hey, Ashford." A smaller voice this time, younger, threading in over the open crew channel instead of the private line. Joss Calder, 17 years old, 4 days into his first full rotation underground, standing close enough that Luke could hear him breathing too fast inside his helmet. "Does it always sound like that? The ice? Like what?" "Like it's, I don't know. Talking." Petra Lindqvist laughed from somewhere off to the left, a dry, tired sound. She'd been cutting ice for 22 years and had the steadiest hands in the crew and the least patience for nerves. "It's not talking, kid. It's settling. Rock does the same thing. Ice just does it louder because it's lazy." "Lazy ice," Joss repeated, like he was trying to decide whether to believe her. "Eyes on your line, not your ears," Garrick cut in. 3 more blocks. Luke kept cutting. He liked Joss, in the brief, uncomplicated way you like someone you've known for 4 days and already trust to watch your back. The kid had the wiry build of someone who'd grown up on ration shortfalls, the kind of leanness the administration's nutritionists called efficient in their reports and which Luke's mother, before the radiation sickness finally took her, used to simply call hungry. He'd talked, in the brief gaps between cutting and hauling, about an older sister still waiting for a housing transfer 2 tiers down, about a tutor program he'd almost gotten into before quota requirements pulled him into the mines instead. Ordinary things. The kind of things that filled up a life on the 4th labor tier, where ambition wasn't forbidden, exactly. It was simply never relevant. The 3rd block came free clean, a meter-wide slab of crystalline ice drifting half a centimeter in the low gravity before the hull clamps caught it and dragged it onto the waiting sled. Luke allowed himself, for exactly as long as it took to draw one breath, to feel something close to satisfaction. Then the ice changed its sound. It wasn't loud. That was the thing nobody who hadn't worked a vein ever understood. Collapse didn't announce itself with a roar. It announced itself with a silence breaking in the wrong direction, a creak too long and too low, traveling through the soles of his magnetic boots before it ever reached his ears. Pressure differential, Tunnel 9. The automated warning bled into every channel at once, a calm, genderless voice that had delivered the same message 1,000 times before, in 1,000 other tunnels, to people who were not always still standing when it finished. Thermal gradient critical. Evacuate to primary lift. Move. Garrick's voice cracked for the first time in 14 years of Luke knowing him. Drop the cutters, everybody out. Now. The ceiling of Tunnel 9 did not fall so much as it exhaled. A long fracture line raced across the ancient blue ice overhead, branching like lightning, and then a section the size of a cargo hauler simply let go, dropping in eerie Martian slow motion before the suit's proximity alarms even finished screaming. Luke was already moving toward the lift, thrusters in his boots kicking up a half-meter hop over a buckling section of deck plate, when he registered what was missing from the chaos. Joss's voice. He turned back. Garrick was already shouting something about the lift doors closing in 90 seconds, about quotas and protocols and, get back here, Ashford, and none of it mattered, because Luke had found the kid pinned beneath a collapsed hull rail, one leg trapped under 400 kilograms of buckled steel, his oxygen line crimped white where it ran across his shoulder, his hands clawing uselessly at a release clamp that had jammed solid. Ashford, that section's coming down in under a minute, I see him. There was no argument in Luke's mind to have. There never was. Later, and there would be a later, there would be Angel's voice asking him, why, there would be every authority he had ever respected demanding he explain a calculation he had never actually performed. He would understand that this was precisely the problem. He didn't weigh the variables. He simply moved, the way water moves downhill, because some part of him had already decided, long before this morning, long before he was a fully grown man, that there were things he could live without and things he could not, and watching someone die when his hands were still capable of preventing it sat very near the top of the second list. The laser cutters were already screaming through the buckled rail before he'd fully registered raising his arms. Steam and superheated metal vapor boiled up around his faceplate, fogging his visibility to almost nothing, and he cut anyway, by feel, by the shape of the kid's leg beneath his palm where he braced it clear of the falling debris. Cutting it close, Ashford, Petra's voice, no longer dry, no longer tired. Afraid, for him, which was somehow worse. The rail gave. Luke hauled Joss up and back in one motion that his shoulder joints would make him regret for 3 days afterward, the boy's crimped oxygen line hissing now instead of merely creaking, and fired every thruster the old Mark IV frame had left in its microfusion reserve in a single, undignified, unstoppable lunge toward the lift doors as the rest of the ceiling came down behind them in a silence so total it felt like the inside of his own skull. The doors closed 3 seconds after they cleared them. Through the small reinforced viewport, Luke watched what remained of Tunnel 9 vanish into a white, churning dark. He didn't remember the ride to the surface. He remembered Joss's voice, thin and shaking and laughing in the particular way people laugh when their bodies haven't yet caught up to the news that they are still alive, saying, "You're insane, you know that, you're actually insane," over and over, until the medics pulled him away on a gurney at the surface airlock and Luke was left standing alone in the decontamination bay, steam still rising off his father's old suit, his hands shaking in a way the gloves mercifully hid. That was where Angel found him. She came through the bay doors still wearing her liaison sash, the pale administrative gray that marked her as something other than labor tier even from across a crowded room, her dark hair pulled back with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd left wherever she'd actually been the moment the first emergency alert crossed her console. 10 years now since she'd wandered away from a Founder's Day ceremony as a girl of 9 and a boy of 8 had found her crouched over a broken environmental sensor and fixed it without asking who she was. Neither of them had understood, that day, what was supposed to separate them. Some days, Luke still wasn't sure either of them fully did. She didn't ask if he was hurt. She'd have already pulled his vitals off the suit telemetry the moment Tunnel 9 flagged critical, and she would already know, to the percentage point, exactly how close his oxygen reserve had come to zero. "You went back," she said instead. He was pinned. "I watched the whole thing from operations, Luke. I watched your oxygen curve and I watched the structural collapse model, and for about 40 seconds I genuinely did not know if I was about to listen to you die." Her voice was even, controlled, the way it always was, which was exactly how Luke knew how frightened she'd actually been. Angel Valen did not raise her voice. She simply let the stillness underneath it go a little more brittle. "You'll die trying to save people who wouldn't save you. You know that, don't you? Joss would have come back for me. Joss is 17 and terrified and would have frozen exactly where you found him. You don't know that he would have come back for you. You just need it to be true." She exhaled, and some of the control went out of her shoulders, just for a moment, just long enough for him to see the girl who used to climb down to the lower tiers to find him before either of them understood what a tier was. "One day it's going to be a collapse nobody walks away from. And I am going to be the one standing in operations, watching the curve hit zero, and there will be nothing in any protocol that tells me what to do with that." Luke didn't have an answer that would satisfy her. He never did. So he gave her the only one that had ever been true. "Then somebody has to go first."